Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo.
Hello, and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. I'm sitting here with a big smile on my face because I have probably my most favorite person in the world that I'm about to interview for you all to meet. I talk about him very often. Hear me just like chatting about him, writing about him, all these things. And it is my writing coach, John Romaniello. He is a business mentor, an author, and he's going to tell you all about himself. So I just wanted to say thank you so much, John, for coming on, and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast.
Oh, thank you so much for having me and for that lovely intro. You are one of my favorite people, and it's really great to be here and get to chat with everyone during this confusing time.
Yeah, very confusing time. I mean, I've been wanting to have you on the podcast beforehand, but I actually think this is really timely, just considering, you're going to be, I'm grateful for you you're going to talk a lot about your personal story with, with mental health and depression and struggling with that. And this is a time where those who have a history of anxiety or depression or sadness, anything, it's going to come up. It's inevitable. If we're stuck at home, we're recording this and it's during the quarantine. And so it's just good timing, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm really happy to chat about all of it. It's a challenging time for everyone. Everyone, I think, has their stuff, right? This is certainly, with just given the health concerns, it's a scary time if you are a person over a certain age. It's a scary time if you are currently unemployed. It's a scary time if you have any sort of health issue that can be complicated by COVID-19. And it's also a very scary time for those of us who suffer from mental illness. And even for those of us who don't have one of those particular things, it's hard. Everything's hard for everyone, but there are specific populations that are going to face specific struggles, and this is timely. As you said, it's a good opportunity for us to just kind of have the conversation, see, give those people who do not suffer from mental illness some insight into what it's like, and help the people who do suffer feel less alone. And above all, if we can, offer support and some tips.
Yeah, exactly. All right. So let's start. I always ask, the first question I always ask on the podcast is for you to formally introduce yourself by sharing who you are, what you do, and why you do what you do.
Certainly. My name is John Romaniello. I am an author, as Tony said. My mother would be very upset if I didn't say I'm a New York Times best-selling author. I started in the fitness industry many, many years ago. I was one of the first people in the online fitness space doing fitness coaching online as far back as 2006. I built a big business and content site called Roman Fitness Systems, through which we did coaching for people all over the world. Released a number of e-products. I've been published in every conceivable fitness and self-development website, magazine. Starting in around 2015, I moved more into business mentorship for people like Tony, and then beginning more in like late 2017, early 2018, I stopped focusing specifically on branding and marketing and moved more into the specifics around writing and storytelling as those apply to business. So there are some people for whom I do purely writing coaching and mentorship, like with Tony, I'm helping with her book and we with her TEDx talk that she did. There are other people for whom it's more sort of content coaching and helping them create stuff specifically to drive more sales, or whether it's their sales pages or their articles or things like that. So if it involves the written word or story, I am probably able to help in some way. But my favorite people to work with right now are entrepreneurs who are women. And that's an area where I'm really passionate. I love Historically, I think just because I was a jacked fitness coach in my 20s, most of my clients at the point were men. And then when I moved into the business coaching space, I just took that with me. And so I spent a lot of time working with a lot of guys, and that was fantastic. But now as I've moved more and the industry has shifted around me, it's great to be able to work with strong women and help them build their businesses. There are many amazing business coaches who are women who work specifically with women, and I think that's great. But what I'm finding, and what's been really great for me, is there are a lot of women who are looking for, the creation of a more masculine container and just having a different perspective. And I'm really happy to provide that. It's been so developmentally important for me and made me a better coach. It's also just, I don't have to deal with a lot of the stuff that happens between guys in a working relationship. And so it's really beautiful. And for why I do it, I was always a writer before I was anything else. And when I was very young, when I was in high school, I wanted to be like a high school English and history teacher, teach writing and storytelling. And just that wasn't financially practical. And, everyone in my family encouraged me to pursue things that would make more money, which turned into getting this degree, which turned into avoiding grad school by starting a personal training business. And now somehow I just remember being 18 years old and being very disappointed that I was told I was not allowed to become a teacher. And so it's 20 years later, I'll be 38 in about 2 weeks. And it's amazing that although it's been a very sort of winding, circuitous path, I'm now in a position where I get to do exactly what I wanted to do. And I'm very grateful for the long path it's taken, because I get to help people at a different level. And instead of sitting in a classroom teaching to a bunch of high school kids, hoping every year I got one kid who was like me and just wanted to craved learning this stuff. Now I only work with people who want to learn it and who see the value. And it's so fulfilling in so many ways. So that's why I do what I do.
Yeah, it's awesome. And you are a teacher at heart. You are. That's exactly what you do. You just get to do it with people who, like you said, truly value what you say, and are just eager to learn it. And so that's really, really great that it took you a little bit, but you got here. And I'm grateful
it took the world a little bit. Thank you so much. I think the main thing is, the world was developing in the way that it needed to allowed for this to be a possibility. And now in the time of Corona and quarantine, we can still you're in New York and I'm here in Los Angeles, and we can still have these conversations and teach and learn and add value for the world. Slightly more relevant to this conversation, I'm also a mental health advocate. I do a lot of writing about my own experience with depression, suicidal ideation, and it's an area about which I'm very passionate. I was diagnosed with depression when I was 17 years old. I hid it from the entire world for 17 years, so half my life, and it wasn't until I was 34 years old, after I think it was my third suicide attempt, at which point I finally decided to come out. And in 2015, wrote a very, very long article detailing my struggle with depression and suicidal ideation. And since then, that was a big sort of change in trajectory for my career, because at that point, once I did that, it opened up so much, and I was able to write more freely and discuss these things more effectively. And it's an area where I, to this day, continue to produce content and hold space for people. And of all the things I've ever written, it's the one that I get the most feedback on. And to this day, I probably get an email each week about it, an email or DM. And two things that stand out. The first is from people who also suffer from mental illness. They say that article from someone who had a big platform gave them permission. Writing about it in such a visible, visual, and granular way helped them be able to do the same. And the second, and I think possibly the more impactful, is I get emails from people who themselves do not suffer from any kind of mental illness, and they say, this helped me understand my husband or my grandfather or those things. And so what I really focus on in these conversations is trying to give voice to the people who might not be able to adequately describe their experience, so that people can understand each other.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and you do a really great job with that, guys. I mean, John, you really do understand how to take what someone's thinking and write it, and in a way that it's like they wanted to say it. It's kind of like when you listen to a song and you hear lyrics and you're like, I'm feeling just like that. I could not have said it better. Like it's really, really awesome that you're able to do that. It truly is a gift.
Thank you.
I'm curious, where could we find that article? I feel like I may have read it. I don't know if I've read it before. I want to read it.
If you just go to johnromanello.com/depression, it's right there.
Yeah, that sounds really great. And I'm glad that you brought up the two different people that respond to you, because that's kind of what I wanted to talk about today. So, it's really hard to be stuck in one space regardless, right? We admitted before. I guess first talk, what would you say to that person that might be struggling? I guess actually before we go there, can you tell us a little bit more maybe about how you did, the first part of not overcoming, because you're probably always managing your depression, but maybe in just the beginning stages, once after you opened up about that, what kind of steps did you take after to kind of get to where you are now? And then I guess we'll go from there after that.
Certainly. Like many people, my depression is not constant. It's cyclical. So it comes in waves. There are periods where I am totally fine. Everything's cool. And then there are periods, where the depression comes and it is just overwhelming for as little as 3 weeks to as much as 3 to 6 months. And the first thing that helped me in terms of writing that article was and I wouldn't have known this if I hadn't done it. As I mentioned, I was hiding depression, not just from my platform and my, but from everyone in my life. And that meant I was faking it a lot of the time. And so the first thing that really helped was once I wrote the article and it was out there, I didn't have to pretend anymore. And I didn't realize how much time, effort, and energy I was devoting to keeping up the pretense of being okay. And so the first thing I would say to anyone is that hard conversation in which you are afraid to disclose this thing with which you struggle to the people in your life, that is the most important conversation you can have, because it will allow you to just set down the bullshit. And you can then take all of that energy and time and devote it to just managing your own brain and doing the things that will help you. So that was the first step. The other part is feeling understood. When I published that piece, and this is so much of what I try to provide to other people, the people that came out of the work, and I struggle as well, I just no longer felt alone. There's this crazy trick that happens in your brain when you're someone who struggles from depression or any mental illness. You really convince yourself you're the only one like this, and no matter how many times you hear you're not alone, you still feel alone. No matter how many people in your life say it's fine, you're not a burden, there's some part in the back of your head that's saying this person's fucking lying, you are a burden, and you're at war with your own brain. And the thing that has helped me so much is having other people in my life who also struggle, with whom I can speak about my struggles. One of my best friends, a guy named Chris, also struggles from cyclical depression. And when I am feeling depressed, although everyone in my life at this point they're very, very supportive, there's a level of understanding that can only exist between two people who are suffering from the same thing, that it's just so easy to set it down and just feel understood. And that's very helpful. So by disclosing, you have the opportunity to seek out people with similar struggles, and not to live in the despair of it, or because misery loves company, but because the human heart craves understanding. And right now, in the time of Corona, there are a number of people who are having free pop-up support groups, and I would really investigate that and look into that and see, where can I go if there's no one in your life to whom you can speak? Where can I go to feel understood? And it will certainly help with the feeling of just being understood in terms of the mental illness. But I think that if you don't have that right now, if you are not feeling understood about that thing specifically, you're already in isolation in this moment. that will exacerbate that to a degree that is possibly dangerous. And so more than ever, it is important to seek out other survivors and support them, because sometimes the thing that helps us the most is helping other people, but also seek the support yourself. And that would be a big, big thing.
That's powerful. Thank you. I think that's really, really huge. Connection is like the big word that comes to mind. I think we all want to feel like we belong or we can connect. And like you said, not feeling alone is really powerful. Right. So that's really, really great. Okay. So I guess the next question would be, if you are someone, maybe you're in quarantine, maybe your spouse suffers with depression, and you notice now that, you know, they have that relationship where they do talk about things and they know what's going on. But so let's just say husband and wife, and say the husband's depressed and the wife is like just trying to like get him out of that mood. And because I feel like that's the part that the wife doesn't understand, like, how come, like, I can't make you happy, or how, like, you know, like, what can I do to make it better? What would you say to something like that, or a situation like that?
If you are a person who is in a family or a partnership with someone who suffers from mental illness, the first thing I would say to you is, I hear you and I see you, and I know it's hard. It's hard. Like that person often, you know, like doesn't get the love that from the world that they need, right? Because it's obviously hard to be a person with depression, to struggle from mental illness, but it's also difficult to sit and like watch your partner go through that. And so I see you and I know that it's hard. And the thing that I would love for you to just write down every day is just, it's not about me. And when I say it's not about you, I don't mean that like this experience needs to be about them because they're the one with the illness. I don't mean it's like, it's not about you, like you don't matter. What I mean is you're not the cause of their depression.
Right.
There's nothing that you're doing. It's not about you. You're not making them unhappy. Right. There might not be anything in life necessarily. That's the trickiest part about depression for other people to understand, right? It's sometimes your life can be fucking perfect and you're still depressed because it's something in your brain, whether it's unresolved trauma or whether it's a chemical issue or whatever it is. It might not be situational. It might be simply hormonal or psychological. So when I tell you to write down, it's not about me, what I'm saying to you is you are not the cause of their depression, and because you are not the cause, you also can't be the solution. So please do your work and try to detach from, why aren't I enough to make them happy? Because nothing is going to be enough to make them happy, and you can't fix it. And that's okay. Your goal right now is not to fix it. Your goal isn't to try to get them out of it. Because if somebody... one thing that helps a lot is whenever you hear the word mental illness, replace it with cancer. Just replace it with cancer, because it's not your fault they have cancer. It's not your job to cure their cancer. Your job is to make them understand that you don't love them less because they have cancer, that even though you have to take them to chemo treatments and like sometimes clean up their vomit, it's fine. You love them. You'll do it for anyone. Right. You know, it's like, I mean, we all have pets. I follow my dog around every day and pick up her feces, and I don't love her less because of it. It's just that's the function of being a dog. Being a person who has cancer, you sometimes require extra care, and the people who love you happily do that for you. Yeah. Being a person. So if you are with a person who has mental illness, just stop thinking about it as mental illness and just imagine it as cancer. You can't snap them out of cancer. Right. You can't talk them out of it. The only thing that you can do is repeatedly remind them that you love them and that it's okay that they have cancer, and it's okay if they have mental illness. It's okay if they can't get out of bed today, and that they're safe to talk about how hard it is. Yeah, there's space. There's space in the conversation to talk about, this is really hard for you to go through as a person with mental illness. So create that safety. Don't try to fix it. Just remind them that they're not broken and that there's space. It's okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think because you just said earlier that as many times as someone might say that you're not alone or I get you, I think that's important. It's no matter how many times you've said it, say it again. Let them know it's okay to talk to you. You're open to being there, and you're going to support them the best way that you can. You're Amanda Bucci. If you guys aren't following her on Instagram, Amanda Bucci is John Romaniello's girlfriend, and she wrote such a beautiful caption the other day, all about and I think I'm sure men have this quality too, but I know that a majority of women have this characteristic of wanting to feeling like they have to fix someone, or that they can fix someone, or it's their responsibility to fix someone. And that was the whole piece. And it was just really, really powerful because, Amanda had come to this place where she recognized that that's not her job. And more, whether it's mental illness or not, I think that is something that, I think we all need to look at, take a better job at looking at that. Two people aren't supposed to come together to fill each other up, but it's just to complement each other. It's not supposed to complete each other.
Right. Yeah. Amanda's post was really prescient and very, very profound. And, it's interesting. By the time I had started dating Amanda, I had learned to just be with my depression in an interesting way. And she hadn't had any experience with mental illness. And I'd been through a few relationships where I had, and so it was almost like teaching her, here's how to be the partner to someone with mental illness. And it's, just telling them you can't fix it. It's not your fault. And there were times where she would just be like, try something. And I'm like, that's not what I need. And then she would try something else. And I was like, that's not what I need. And she's like, well, what do you need? I'm like, I'm not quite sure, but it's mostly what I need is to feel understood and to feel like this is okay. Right. And, for Amanda, one of the beautiful things she wrote in that was she needed to just be okay with giving me the dignity of my own experience. Mm-hmm. And, I've really gotten, pretty far with my mental health in the expectation of management and all that. But it is kind of, if you're in a newer relationship and you are used to sort of stepping up and doing things for each other, it's challenging to have to step back. And one thing is I was a fully functioning human being for 37 years or 36 years before I met Amanda. So I knew I had been dealing with my depression since I was 17 and managing it openly since I was 34. So, of course it would be ridiculous for her as someone without depression or had never experienced that to be like, oh, I can come in and help. It's that's a type of ego that we all experience, and everybody wants to help. No, I think that people on the top level aren't trying to fix; they want to help. Mm-hmm. But really, what it comes down to is we have managed to find ways if I'm in a depressive state, which hasn't happened in quite a while, where we just communicate about it in a way that is loving and gentle, and there are things that I might need during that time, just reminders to hey, maybe try to take a shower. But also there are boundaries. One reminder feels good. I'm okay, this person cares about me. 3 reminders is nagging. And now I feel like I'm not doing something. And so it's just, you begin to navigate all of that with your partner, and just don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to experiment. And, if you are a person with depression and or with anxiety or whatever it is, when you're not in it, when you're not in anxiety.
Yeah, I was going to ask that part. I feel like because you have come so far, I don't really know you then, but I do know you enough to know that you are very mature and you've done a lot of introspection and you've grown a ton to get where you're at. And I know that you and Amanda do a more than an incredible job at communicating, I think, but I just no, really though. True. But I guess the thing I was thinking of is most people, when they're in a very depressed state or they're very anxious, they don't want to talk about it. And I guess when is that conversation supposed to happen?
I think it's most helpful. I think like anything else, like if you can have the conversation when you're not in a depressive period about this is what I might need, or immediately after, this is what I would have needed. If you are someone who suffers from depression or anxiety, or bipolar disorder or PTSD or whatever, when you are not episodic, when you are just stable, when you're level, take some time to like talk to your partner about it and create an action plan, because nobody is out there driving their car thinking they're going to get into an accident, but we're all required to have insurance, and we all know the procedure for like what to do in that situation. Nobody thinks they're going to catch on fire, but everyone knows how to stop, drop, and roll. Mm-hmm. And people with mental illness, they have so much shame around having it that they just, when they're not in it, they're just like, that's behind me. I don't want to think about it. Mm-hmm. But we have to accept it's going to come up again. And so when you are not in the experience of it, when you are level, that is the time to begin having these conversations and putting these things in place. And that could be, these are the things I'd like you to encourage me to do. These are the things that I like struggle with. One of the big things for me is I'm really great at, even when I'm depressed, I'm really, really great at doing things for other people and showing up for other people, but less so for myself. And so if I'm in a depressive state, something that I hate is how unproductive I feel. But something as simple as like Amanda asking me to like make her breakfast. I'm like, yeah, I can get up and do that. Yeah, sure. I'll take care of that. It's just this thing that I was like, oh yeah, that feels good. And other people might not be like that. And right. They might it might be more helpful for someone to bring them breakfast to remember to eat. And whatever that person needs is known only to them. And it might take a lot of exploratory conversation for them to like sort of figure that out. Right. But you're not going to figure it out by not talking about it.
Hello, I'm interrupting this podcast episode for a brief announcement and special offer just for you. Did you know that April is IBS Awareness Month? Well, if you're someone who struggles with IBS, then listen up because I have a special offer just for you. Holy Ghost IBS Restore has been clinically proven to help nutritionally manage the symptoms of all types of irritable bowel syndrome, including constipation, diarrhea, and a mixture of both. Many who use this medical food have experienced relief in symptoms such as less bloating, less diarrhea, less constipation, and more normal bowel movements. 48% of users reported an improved overall quality of life, including an increase in energy, decrease in irritability, and just an overall better mood. It comes in a powdered form, so you can put it in your water, in your smoothie in the morning, or even your hot or cold cereal. It doesn't have any flavor or coloring, so you won't even notice that it's there, other than beginning to feel symptom relief after adding it to your daily routine for a certain period of time. It doesn't contain gluten, preservatives, GMOs, or soy, and it's free from artificial flavorings, sweeteners, and colorings. This is not like your typical probiotic. Holy Ghost IBS Restore actually contains unique microbiome nutrients called HMOs that fuel the good bacteria that are already in your gut rather than bringing in some sort of good bacteria that hasn't been there before. So unlike probiotics, which add foreign bacteria to your body, IBS Restore works with your body's own good bacteria. Simply put, it works by selectively nourishing and stimulating the growth of your own good bacteria, activating them to thrive and outperform the bad bacteria. So if you want to give Holy Ghost IBS Restore a try, go to holios.com or the link in the show notes. And don't forget to use discount code TIPS30 at checkout to get 30% off your order. Yeah. So I guess what I'm thinking is, did you, outside of with your partner talking, but like, have you been to a therapist before? Because,
yeah.
Because I feel like, I talk about it all the time, but I would love for you to talk about it as a man. There's a lot of, like, so many men, especially, and I'm just going to be honest, like my boyfriend's African-American, and like, he's like, we don't do that. we just don't do that. And I'm like, well, I mean, we have to get over that. We have to get rid of that stigma. Like everybody, I feel like, I don't want to generalize it, but I'm very passionate about it just because it's helped me so much. And I know a lot of people who've experienced like really a lot of growth from going to therapy. Like, what would you say to someone who's super resistant to that? And are there other ways to kind of get through it without having to go to therapy?
When people tell me like, I don't want to go to therapy, I'm like, are you still on fucking dial-up? Like, what are you doing? Like, why are you making your life harder on purpose? Do you drive around with your e-brake on?
Oh my God, I love that analogy. I'm gonna say
it's just like, it's like, you're not like, here's the thing. There's zero downside. Yeah. Maybe you don't have the breakthroughs that some people talk about. Maybe it takes a while but there's 0% chance it can hurt. And
right.
So for some people, when you present it like, well, the only obstacle is like the time and scheduling and then, maybe the investment, the money. And I get that. And that can be a challenge, but there are so many ways to mitigate that with Talkspace and the stuff that's popping up now. So whatever people tell me, like they don't like want to go to therapy, I'm just like, listen, all therapy is, it's coaching for your brain. And you have to use your brain every day. So like, just do it. Like, I mean, fucking how many coaches does Tom Brady have? How many different people whom you respect do you have to see having a performance coach and a writing coach and a health, like it's just the thing. And all it is somebody asking you a question in a way that is going to get you to like, probe into yourself and ask yourself the question. It's like, I guess that is why I feel that way. And you just wouldn't have done it otherwise. Right. And there's no downside. So I know there are communities. Keep in mind, I'm from a mixed race family. Half of my family on my dad's side is Black, and there is a stigma about it, particularly for men. But I don't understand why anyone is going to be on dial-up when it's silly. Just there's so much value in it, and it's not weakness to reveal your problems. It's not. It's strength to solve them. Yeah. I think so. Just to play like almost like devil's advocate, or just ask the question I know some people are probably going to ask or think, or their spouse is saying to them. And I'll just use my boyfriend as an example. Yeah. He'll say to me, like, I don't like something about, well, I'm going to use a good example. One, he doesn't feel like there's anybody that he can connect with because he's been through so much, and because his story, like, I will never share it. It's his to be told, but it is pretty crazy. And I know there are other people out there that have been through similar situations, but it's going to be difficult to find a therapist, I think, that can truly understand where he came from to where he is now. So in his mind, it's like, no one's going to understand me. Like, there's no point. And also, I think, then that's basically the main thing. He's like, I don't really get the point. Like, what's the point? That's kind of like the biggest thing that comes up with the resistance. Sure. So the point I would say is
like, it's a waste of time. I think in his mind, it'll be a waste of time. But I think you kind of already answered that, though.
So, I mean, I think the question is like, what would need to happen? Mm-hmm. What result would you need to get out of it for it to not be a waste of time? Like, out of 5 days out of the week, out of 7 days out of the week, how many of those days are you happy? How many of those days are you angry? Mm-hmm. How many of those days are you sad? How many of those days are you stressed? What if the number of days you went up, the number of days you were happy went up by 1, the number of days you were stressed went down by 2, the number of days you were angry went down by 1, and the number of days you were like relaxed went up by 1? Would that be enough? If you could get there in a year, would that be enough? Like, what is the result that you would personally need to feel? What if, like, you could make more money? What if you could, like, what if, if you were saying to Bruce, what if we could fight? What if we could have 2 fewer fights every month? Mm-hmm. But the whole thing is the entirety of what am I going to get out of it? What's the point? Is encapsulated in the resistance to it, right. Which is I don't think anyone's going to understand.
Mm-hmm.
What if there is somebody, and there is, of course there is somebody who's going to, maybe they haven't been through the exact same experience, but like that feeling that Bruce is sitting in right now is, you know, maybe he doesn't suffer from a specific mental illness like cyclical depression or PTSD, but that feeling is something we all go through, and it really contributes to depression and anxiety and PTSD. It's that feeling of isolation.
Right.
Like, imagine what it's like for Bruce right now in this moment. He's walking around the world every minute of every day, of every week, of every month, of every year, feeling that no person can ever really understand him. That is a lot. And if what he got out of therapy was finding someone who did, that in and of itself changes your entire experience of the world, because you find someone who does understand.
Mm-hmm.
And during, like, obviously you can never experience what Bruce experienced.
Right.
Amanda can never experience what I experienced.
Right.
But through therapy and all of the tools that I use in my life, and in terms of communication and storytelling and writing, like, I can't necessarily help. I can't give the Amanda the experience of going through what I went through, and I wouldn't want to. But I can help her understand, if not what it was like for me, at least what it's like for me now to have gone through it.
Mm-hmm.
And so what Bruce would get out of it is not only feeling understood by this other person, but developing a tool set to help you, his partner, understand. Mm-hmm. And that is a gift that both of you will benefit from. Mm-hmm. And maybe the first person he sees won't get it. Maybe they won't connect. My experience has been very much like early on when I was in my 20s and I was trying to find a therapist. I was like Bruce. I was like, I wanted someone who understood. I needed to find someone who, like, I went through a bunch of different therapists and it was kind of like dating. And I was like,
did you want someone that like looked like you? Because
that was a big thing. I wanted somebody who reminded me of me.
Yeah, like, I don't think he's like resistant to see a woman. Like, he wants to see a black man. That's what he feels like is going to be the closest to what understands him. But then obviously then your pool is smaller. Like, what takes all of those things. But yeah, I'm curious if you find that that's more beneficial or not.
It was beneficial for me because finding someone who reminded me of myself was the entry point into therapy. And I made enough progress there that, like, when I left that person, because I had like moved into the city and I needed to find someone new, I had worked through that idea. Mm-hmm. So right now, here's the gift of COVID-19. Every single therapist in the world is now taking clients online, everyone. Mm-hmm. And so, if you had told me 5 weeks ago, 6 weeks ago, Bruce is like, he's only like willing to see a black male therapist, and so the pool is smaller, I would have been like, put Bruce on the phone. Let me tell him to man the fuck up and go into New York City, because he's a train ride away from probably like 50 super specific, highly skilled black male therapist. Like, when Amanda and I were looking for a relationship coach, we wanted someone who was queer informed, poly informed, trauma informed, kink informed. And we found that person in 5 minutes on Instagram.
Wow.
And they also had to be in New York. And so we're working with a therapist named Andrea Glick, who is the Somatic Witch on Instagram. She's fantastic. She's lovely. But we found that in 5 minutes. So if we can find someone who is New York based, queer, poly, kink, BDSM, like all of those things, like Bruce can find a dude who just like happens to be black. Like, it's really not that different. And now, it's like the one qualifier is like, okay, I want a man who is black, who deals with the specific types of trauma that I've been through, and like maybe works with, people who have, and when you like research therapists, like all of their specialties are listed.
Yeah. So
you can find that and now that everything is online,
that's a good
his
point.
Pool is no longer who's in Westchester County or in New York City. It's fucking everywhere.
Right.
Like, you can find that I guarantee you find that person in town.
That's actually a really good point. And I think a lot of this transitional right now, everyone's kind of forced to do things online. I think it's going to truly impact. They're going to notice. Like, fortunately, my whole nutrition coaching business has been online. So for me, nothing really has changed. But I've noticed even when I was doing that, like, more people show up. There's no reason, like when I used to do in-person consultations, if it snowed, nobody came. If it was cold, no one, if they were tired after a long day. But now, when everything's home, it's just, there's less resistance. There's less reasons to kind of pull back. And I think that this is going to be a new, like a beautiful thing, because I do believe that this has created where more people now are online, and I feel like they're going to stay there. I think a big amount.
Yeah, it would be challenging to go back. Yeah. And I think that's going to affect everything. I wonder how it's going to affect colleges and universities who like are now hosting classes online. And
then also just people, like, I feel like, I hope that people recognize that, like, you don't have to commute 4 or 5 hours a day for your job. Like, your quality of life is just so much more important. And I really hope that people recognize that part. I know it was hard for me. Like, I used to work all these jobs and was always in my car and all this stuff. And I like felt like I had to, I don't know, but now it's like, life can be great. Like, like you can wear pajamas all day if you wanted to, or you can get dressed and, go to work. But anyways, all right. So this is really great. One thing I definitely wanted to talk about, believe it or not, you said it, you said it in a conversation the other day that we were just talking, and it kind of struck me because it's just like I was saying earlier, you have this way of saying things that like make it all make sense. And even though you were thinking that, it's like, oh wow, like now it really makes sense. But you said an expression and it says anger is depression inward. Is that the correct expression that you utilize?
Yeah, it's depression is anger turned inward. Yeah, depression
is anger turned inward. And so I'm also very open, and I feel this is where I like start to feel bad for talking about all these other people. I struggle with emotions too, but growing up, I've opened up about this before. My sister struggled a lot, and we didn't know what she was dealing with. She was always angry. It was always yelling. It was always fighting. It was always throwing things. It was always yelling. It was always screaming. It was just constant. And she went to, all the therapists, and they tested her for all these different things. And they thought maybe she was bipolar or anxious or whatever. And at the end of the day, it was that she had some like anxiety and depression. But in my mind, I was like, that can't be right. I'm like, I'm like, it has to be something else. Like, she's just angry. And now, like, obviously through work, I've recognized the difference, but that saying, I don't know, it really like made me realize like, oh, okay. Like, I don't know. It changed the game for me.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you acknowledging that. I will say that I don't remember where I heard that, but it's not my quote. When we start thinking about the way these things manifest, right? So when I say depression is anger turned inward, what I mean is many, many people growing up, part of their trauma was what they were not allowed to express anger, and they had to push it down, or they grew up in environments like mine where where anger led to pain and violence, because my father was very abusive to my mother and me, and so I learned to push my anger down. And in your case, there was a lot of chaos in the household. And so, for you saw the upset that your sister's anger caused. And so you might have taken your anger and pushed it down. But what we need to realize is anger is an emotion like happiness. It's something that occurs, and it's not wrong or bad. And you're allowed to experience it and move through it. It is real. It is healthy. It is sacred. You just have to find the ways to move through it in that it's not going to negatively affect you or other people. Mm-hmm. In the case of me, I felt I wasn't allowed to be angry, and so I pushed it down and pushed it down and pushed it down. Eventually, anger just festered and went toxic and turned into unhappiness and depression. And I didn't, now that certainly there's fewer things in my life that upset me, but I also deal with anger very quickly and I move through it. And so I'm less likely to allow it to manifest as depression. For someone like your sister, your household environment was a place that anger was allowed to exist. And so if she was feeling, kids don't have the emotional vocabulary to explain what's going on. There was a beautiful article I think it might have been the New York Times. I don't recall, but or it might have been Huffington Post, but it was a couple months back where they talked about the language kids use to describe anxiety. Kids can't, they're not emotionally in touch enough to say, I'm experiencing anxiety, but they can say my stomach hurts. And so one of the physiological, like if you are a person who experiences anxiety, you can get that immediately. You remember,
Right.
That when you get an anxiety attack, all of a sudden something happens in your stomach, whether you get a stomach ache, you have to go to the bathroom, or that happens. So when you're a kid, you don't have the emotional vocabulary to say I'm experiencing anxiety. So maybe you say my stomach hurts. In your sister's case, she didn't have the emotional vocabulary to say I'm feeling anxious, or to sit with the anxiety, which is feeling of fear and not knowing what to do. So it seems as though it manifested by expressing anger outwardly, because at least when you're expressing anger, it gives you a feeling of control. Right. You get to control the way people are reacting, because if you yell, this is going to happen. You get to throw things because then you get to watch them break. It's a type of control that you receive. So just as depression is anger turned inward, anger can be anxiety turned outward. There's all of these emotions. They're complicated things inside of us, and stuff like therapy allows us to go through the process of inquiry until we get to, like, maybe it's this, and then go down that road a bit. And whether it is depression or anxiety, it's either a thing unto itself, which is fine, or it's a manifestation of something deeper, which is also fine. But you have the option and the opportunity through therapy and through journaling and through medicine, whether it is pharmaceutical or like plant medicines like ayahuasca and mushrooms and all these things, which are now being used and FDA approved for the treatment of PTSD, depression, anxiety. You have the option to start exploring. And figure out, like, what is the root of this. And for me, obviously, so much of my depression came from my trauma. But it's not enough to say that I experienced physical and sexual abuse as a kid, and so I'm now depressed. Like, those two things are true, but in between those 2 points, there's something happening, and there's a number of other things, and that is what the work is. That is what the therapy is for, to, like, go into my own psyche and see, like, all right, well, my agency was taken from me when I was young, and that manifested in this wound where I need to be in control of an argument. Like, if things start getting heated, I feel very unsafe, and the only way that I can feel safe is to be bigger and louder than everyone else. And as long as people are scared of me, they can't hurt me. But then I see that if I do that and I get bigger and louder, they're afraid of me, and that makes me feel shit. So I will, instead of ever getting angry, I'll push it down and push it, and then I'll just sit with it. And in my head, I'll be getting angry, and that already makes me feel badly. So I'll just think that I'm a terrible person. Right. Or, these people did these things to me when I was young, these people who were supposed to love me and protect me, and they didn't, which must mean I'm not worth loving and protecting. And so 20 years later, when I was in a romantic relationship and I began feeling all of these things, that, like, this deep love for somebody, and I felt that somebody loved me back, that wound would get activated. And I would say to myself, somewhere deep down, some part of my mental illness would whisper to me, you don't deserve love. This person either doesn't love you or is going to change their mind. They're going to leave. And what I would do was act out and sabotage the relationship. Sometimes, start fights with people. Other times I would cheat because I needed this person to hate me. I needed to look into their eyes and see the way that I hated me reflected back, because that was the only way that I could make sense of the world, because deep down I felt I was unlovable because the people who were supposed to love me didn't, or they did, and they did this stuff anyway. And I, maybe I didn't know how to exist without a wound. And it's been a process over the past, 5 years, really, healing more and more of the stuff and asking these questions. But as far as going back to someone like Bruce, there are probably behaviors in his life that he wants to change, or ways that he feels, or things that he thinks about, and that like there's a reason for them, and you just got to dig a couple of levels deep, and they're there. And I'm not here to say like depression is solvable or curable or fixable. Right. I'm saying that everything in the world is treatable and manageable, and I don't want to diminish the things I have gone through, both in terms of the trauma itself and the experience of depression. I've had intense suicidal ideation in my life. I've had 5 suicide attempts. But I hear so much that people are struggling. And if you are, please reach out to me. I'm happy to be here for you. But you have, the things that have happened to you are not your fault. But dealing with them is your responsibility. Mm-hmm. And I know that sometimes just hearing that is triggering. And now you want to tell me to go fuck myself. Mm-hmm. And I get it. And if that's where you are right now, that's fine. But if there's something in your body that's saying, John, go fuck yourself, I want you to do me a favor. I want you to write in your journal the date and time that you're listening to this and write down exactly how you're feeling. And then I want you to go back 1 year from today and see if you still feel that way. And like, that's how you'll know you've made progress, when you're ready to hear that your healing is your responsibility. And whatever has to happen between those 2 points, whether it's nothing changing in your life that you want to change, whether it's repeating patterns and hurting yourself or other people, eventually you're going to have to do some of the work. And there are so many people who want you to heal and who love you and who support you and want to do that for you and with you. And it's not a burden to them. And it's a great honor. It will be the great honor of their lives to have stood by you as you like went to battle with your own psyche and your past and started to heal these things. That, it's a brilliant thing. Like Han Solo isn't mad at Luke Skywalker for like having to help him to destroy the Death Star. He is happy to be there. And everyone in your life is that, is Hermione Granger or Han Solo or the Tin Man and Cowardly Lion. They, in your hero's journey of your recovery, the people in your life are your allies, and they love you and they want to help. So let them. Mm-hmm. And if you are listening and you are someone who has the opportunity to step up and step in for someone, figure out the things that you can do and the things that you shouldn't do without making it so difficult for yourself. At some point, like there are people who suffer from like narcissistic personality disorder, and I don't think those are bad people. I think they're wounded people. But staying in relationships that can cause you more damage in the long run isn't your responsibility. Mm-hmm. Just have these hard conversations. Mm-hmm. Try and figure out ways that you guys can heal each other. So all relationships, I was once told, are they're containers in which one of 2 things will happen. One, your triggers will trigger each other and you have these 2 wounds and they'll just keep rubbing up against each other and it'll just keep hurting more. Or you can use that container to help each other heal. It's not your job to heal the other person. It's your job to heal yourself. But just as you're a team, it's your job to allow the other person to help you if that's what they're offering. And it's helpful to offer help to the other person as well and help them heal. And that's the beauty of the container that we've got right now with COVID. It's challenging. We're all stuck at home. There's limited personal space. There is, limited activity, but we have the collected knowledge and wisdom of the ages available to us in our hands and in our pockets. And every mental health professional in the world is ready to produce content or work with you directly. There are tons of books on the subject. Mm-hmm. And if nothing else, it gives us an opportunity to sit in a house with a person that we love and just look at them and just stare at them and say, I love you and it's okay. And I love you and it's okay. And I love you and it's okay. It's okay today. It'll be okay tomorrow, because I'm not going to stop loving you just because this thing in your brain is telling you that I don't, or that I shouldn't, or that you shouldn't. I promise. And just as many times as we need to hear that, we need to hear that.
Yeah. Oh, John, you have me on the verge of tears. Thank you so much for that. That was absolutely beautiful. Is there anything else? Because I know we're both kind of on a time crunch, although I feel like we could go deeper and deeper into this. Is there anything else that you want to say or add on as we kind of wrap up today?
Certainly. A couple of just quick little like lightning tips. For me, and I can only speak of my experience, and the people to whom I've spoken, there is a kind of solace in control, and in particular controlling your environment. And so right now, if you are on the verge of a depressive or anxious state, or you're experiencing it, like, this could be a cool opportunity for you to take control. Just little habits that you could do every day, like make your bed, put your shoes away, like redecorate, clean out your closet, like do the things that like you probably need to do anyway. Mm-hmm. But even something as simple as like taking a daily action, like, you know, obviously if you're home and you want to be in charge of your health, you don't have to commit to an entirely brand new workout plan. But even like, I'm going to do 10 push-ups 3 times a day. I'm going to hold the plank for 30 seconds 3 times a day. Just feel like you're making progress doing something like that. If you're someone like me, who's like a reasonably heavy bearded person, committing to shaving every day, just like that is going to keep normalcy in the routine. Stuff like that. Find a way in your environment and in your life that gives you the feeling of still being in control. Because when that evaporates, when we feel that we're not in control anymore, it's much easier for those demons to start whispering a little bit more loudly. So whatever the thing is that allows you to just sort of be in the driver's seat of your own life and environment, make a list and get to it. That would be very helpful.
Mm-hmm. Wow. Thank you so much, John. Okay, where can people find you? Guys, if you're listening to this and you're not already following John on Instagram or Facebook, wherever he tells you to find you, please go do so. And please message him to let him know that, because it's not, you know, I know that you're comfortable sharing this because you've done all of the work, but I just want you to know, like, it's still appreciated, and thank you for continuing to share your story, because I can't imagine it being easy, because every time you talk about it, I'm sure something still comes up. So thank you for that, and I would really appreciate you guys if you could just let John know that his story helped you in some way, if it did. Just so that we all can create a space where we are more open and vulnerable and just share what's going on with us. Because like John said from the very beginning, that was just the first step to his healing and to him being where he is today. So once again, thank you, John. Where can people find you?
As you mentioned, I am findable on Instagram. It is the platform on which I'm most active. You can also go to johnromanello.com and join my email list. Anything that you guys need or want to share, I'm happy to receive. The easiest way, if you're listening to this podcast or if you listened to it once or twice before, take a screenshot and just like share it to your IG stories and please tag me. That way I am sure to see it and I'm happy to reshare. But more than anything else, if you could just let me know what specific thing was of value to you. And I'm happy to keep having this conversation and to keep being part of the mental health conversation. And above all, know that you are loved and you are seen and people are here for you. It's a hard time. Things are weird. The world is not going to be the same after, but we're always going to be here to love each other. So.
Awesome. All right, John, thanks so much. Thank you guys for listening. As always, you're listening to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.